Right, Phil, thanks really for that. Anybody who's been watching us over the last few weeks will have been aware at this point that you're coming to mark our card now for the football over the weekend with your sort of non-fiction work here of must watch, might watch, and won't watch of games. And normally I'm sort of surprised at the games, and it's true also of this week that you've put in the won't watch, but certainly one that's standing out that I'm surprised you've lashed into the must watch, top of the billing, Sheffield United against City. I thought you would have consigned that one to the don't bother list.
Well, it's the first game. It's the half-12 game tomorrow. And I know this is a tough weekend for the Premier League because they're competing with Championship, obviously the Six Nations as well, whereas they've almost had a monopoly of sporting events over the last few weekends. But the sporting calendar is cranked up. I know Owen touched on it during the week, and there's so much sport going on. So you have to be quite selective if you want to get through the weekend, if you want to actually function as a human being, whether you get to eat, sleep, shower, that kind of thing. There's also things that you have to do around the house. So the reason I've gone for Sheffield United and Manchester City, obviously Sheffield United haven't won a game this season. Manchester City dropped points again last weekend away from home, and they won during the week. Now we've seen this, they win Champions League games quite comfortably, and then it comes to the domestic league and they can't do it. So we know with Sheffield United, we saw them at Anfield last week, they are a pretty hard nut to crack. Now, they haven't won a game this season, but they don't lose games by many goals. I seem to remember Manchester United beat them 3-0 towards the end of last season, but other than that, I can't remember a team putting more than 2 goals past them. So we know how organised they are. This is going to be a test for the patience of Manchester City. And
are you suggesting Sheffield United are going to get something out of this? Is that why you're saying tune in?
I don't know if they get something out of it. I think the best they could hope for is a draw, but it'll just be interesting to see how Manchester City go about trying to break them down. We know City are so good in attack, and obviously Kevin De Bruyne didn't start that game last week against West Ham, so you'd imagine he starts, and he is the key to unlocking that Sheffield United back five, and it really is a hard nut to crack, and I think that's what impressed so much, whereas last week from a Liverpool point of view that they conceded the penalty and they still were able to turn it around, because Sheffield United are one of those teams that you do not want to concede the first goal. We also know with Manchester City away from home in the Premier League, if they're trailing at half-time, they don't win games. That's going back to the start of last season. So, no, it's a tricky one. It's a lunchtime kick-off. It's obviously coming off the back of a European game for City, so they can't be sleepy going into this one. That's why I'm going to watch it. Plus, as I said, it's the first game of the weekend.
Popular by default.
Sorry, the first game of tomorrow. There's obviously one on tonight.
Just about to say, you've consigned tonight's game to the might watch list, but I'm not sure if we'll do we have time to really get into the intricacies of Wolves versus Crystal Palace?
No, it's
probably not.
It's basically who wants to attack first. Two counter-attacking teams. They're going to be urging each other to attack so they can break each other down. So this could be, a fairly low-scoring one. But as I said there, just in the roundup, the winner actually goes level of points at Everton and Liverpool. So there is a bit on the line. But I'm sure I will probably end up watching it.
It's competing with the late shows that are thereabouts, Phil. That's why you're
well, in fairness, the late, I don't. The late is usually on in my house on a Friday, so that could be the second screen for me.
Phil, talk to us now. Liverpool, West Ham, this is one that's definitely in the must-watch, right? And partly to do with the possibility of Moisey doing the tango up and down the touchline, obviously, is a big reason that people are going to tune in. But on a serious note, there is suddenly a possibility when you would have thought about this fixture a few weeks ago, you're thinking Liverpool get the job done here. But West Ham 8 points from the last 4, that 1-1 with City, and they are not the team that almost got relegated last season.
No, and they're not the team that lost 2-0 to Newcastle in the opening weekend, and then everyone looked at their next few fixtures and thought David Moyes would be sacked soon enough. And then David Moyes obviously had to stay at home because he contracted COVID-19, and from home he watched his team beat Wolves 4-0, Leicester 3-0. Then they come from 3-0 down against Spurs. They get a 1-1 draw against City last weekend. So David Moyes is feeling pretty good about things, and one notable change with his team from the team that he took over last season is those flair players, the likes of Felipe Anderson, Lanzini. I know he got that goal against Spurs, but these lads are not getting into it. Well, obviously Anderson's gone out on loan, but they're not getting into his team. He's got a really well structured, hard to break down team playing the counter attack. Mikel Antonio is the key to all this. So we know Fabinho's missing for Liverpool. That's going to be a massive loss because he had slotted quite nicely into that defence without Virgil van Dijk. So what does Klopp do? He's obviously got Joe Gomez +1. Joe Matip is close to a return. Does he go for Jordan Henderson, who obviously played there in the World Club Cup? Does he go for Reece Williams, the teenager who came on against Midtjylland? And the biggest compliment I would pay to Reece Williams the other night is you didn't actually notice he was there, because he was quite comfortable. He's quite a tall defender. Maybe he'd be quite useful for set pieces. But I think having Alisson back is massive for Liverpool. But Antonio has had a tight hamstring the last couple of games. He's gone off. So that'll be one to keep an eye on. If he is in the starting 11, if Reece Williams does start, Mikel Antonio will be putting himself straight onto him saying, welcome to the Premier League, son. Let's see what you're made of.
Are you playing Jota with the 3 boys up front?
I think he might do, yeah. I think he might go 4-2-3-1 again, just to give a bit of protection to the back four, regardless of who is there, whether it's Jordan Henderson in the back four or Reece Williams. If Jordan Henderson doesn't play in central defence, you'd imagine he'd play midfield. I know Klopp took him off at half-time. He's pretty much managing his minutes at the moment. There was no injury there. He's just working his way back to full fitness. We might see Thiago as well. But if Liverpool play with that front four, obviously they're going to cause West Ham problems. But this is a tricky one. This is a game that caused Liverpool problems last season. And Moyes had no luck as Everton manager at Anfield, but he might feel this is the time. This is the time to go to Anfield and get a win.
Manchester United against Arsenal is in your must-watch games as well. Like, obviously it's a must-watch because of the 2 teams involved. But it does seem, on the evidence of Manchester United's and Arsenal's most recent Premier League games, that there is a huge premium on keeping things tight at the back at the moment. Arsenal are struggling big time to score goals. Manchester United not struggling when their opposition seems to be excellent. Obviously, we saw that midweek. Are you giving this favour being Manchester United's favour? Phil, like, are they heavy favourites in your head?
I think obviously it all points towards a United win, but one thing Arteta has done since he's come in at Arsenal, he's made them harder to beat, and he's probably compromised a lot of their attacking play in terms of playing off the cuff. It seems to be very structured at the moment. Now, he had to shore things up because Arsenal were too soft. They were letting in too many goals. So now he's made them hard to beat. And you would imagine he'll sit in. And that actually makes things tougher for United. Obviously, United, we've seen with the wins away to PSG and the win at home to Leipzig, if you come onto United and give them space to play in behind, they'll absolutely rip you apart. And obviously Rashford was key to that. Watching the game the other night, obviously they got the first half goal with Greenwood, and then when Solskjaer was able to bring on Bruno Fernandes and Rashford, the amount of space that Rashford had, if you give him that space, you're just asking for trouble. So this won't have gone unnoticed from Arteta. You'd imagine he'll sit in quite deep and they'll try and play in the break. What he does with Aubameyang, I don't know. I kind of thought when they signed Willian, this would be in a move from the left-hand side to the centre for Aubameyang. We haven't seen that yet. Maybe Sunday is the time to do it, because you need to get United out of their defensive shape. You need to bring United onto you and then see, can you exploit the space in behind them, because we know Lindelof and Harry Maguire are not the quickest defenders. Their best defender is Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but you know, if you bring United out and they have to play a high line, there's only so much Wan-Bissaka can do. So it could be cagey. I think that's why it's a must-watch. And probably you're buying into the history of the fixture, you know, what it used to represent. But here you have 2 teams trying to get back to what they used to be. Still a fair bit off, but United certainly look like they're ahead of Arsenal in that sense.
You've Leeds, Leicester in the must-watch, and Tottenham, Brighton as well. And suddenly, you mentioned earlier on about after last night's game when Jose has heading him like a smack backside, and he's making 4 substitutes at half time, said he wants to make 11 if he could have done. Dele Alli is amongst them. Like, this is just a continuation of a downward spiral here, that he's lashing out and there's no way back from Mourinho. Or, I mean, they may well and probably will go out and beat Brighton at the weekend, but it feels like the continuation of a major downward spiral for this guy at Spurs.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I think what Mourinho was doing last night was basically saying to anyone that questions why isn't such and such in the team, he'll just say, the Antwerp game. You asked me why Dele Alli doesn't get a game. I took him off at half time. It was a terrible performance. So, no, I think all this does is basically just means Mourinho is going to stick to his tried and trusted 11. Now, that might come back to haunt them later in the season if he doesn't rotate enough. But is he going to rotate? I I kind of thought the way he was going to approach the Europa League would be rest all your first team players, and that's what he tried to do last night, but it didn't work out. So that would suggest now, to get through that group, he's going to have to play more first team players for the rest of the European campaign, which could come back to bite them later in the Premier League. But no, the Premier League team is, you know, he's all, everything's going well in the Premier League. He hasn't been digging out players the way he usually does. And that was the first defeat of the season since the opening weekend when they lost to Everton. So things have been going quite nicely for Mourinho. But I think the reason Brighton, or any game Brighton are involved in, they don't really go into games the way they used to. Whereas since Graham Potter's come in, they said, look, they're going to have a go. They're going to lose games. They're going to give up opportunities, but they're actually quite entertaining. It's kind of gone the other way. Obviously, Chris Hughton was all about getting them into the Premier League, keeping them there, which he did brilliantly. And Graham Potter is now trying to add a few layers to them. So they're quite easy on the eye, but probably don't score enough goals for all that lovely football they play.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see where this train ends. You've got Burnley, Chelsea in the might watch, Newcastle, Everton as well, and Villa, Southampton, and Fulham, West Brom in the won't watch, Phil. So listen, don't enjoy those games over the weekend that you definitely will watch, and we'll catch up with you again next week. Thanks, William.
Thanks, lads. Enjoy the shave. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Bloody hell. Not sure I'm looking forward to that one. Phil, thanks a million. Phil Egan on the line, as always, of a Friday to mark your card for the weekend. It's really a one-stop shop between that and Owen's guide to what's going on at the weekend. It'll come down an absolute treat with people. That's everything you need to know in like crazy busy times for sport, and long may it continue over the next few months when we've, let's face it, bugger all else to do.